Coming up on Netball Unlocked, we take a look back at a monumental round 13 where, after Notts fell to Panthers, we have our top four confirmed for the postseason. Paul caught up with England netball head coach Jess Thirlby to get a deeper understanding of the Roses squad this year and some bigger picture items. And it's just as well, because we'll be without him. Tonight, it will be a combination of myself and Ella Powell-Davies stepping in. So here we go. Hello and welcome along to episode 24 of Netball Unlocked. A pretty topsy-turvy week leaves us with plenty to talk about, not least as the battle for placings within the top four is still very much alive. But before we get into all of that, Ella, welcome back.
Hello, thanks for having me back again. Sooner than I thought, but happy to be here.
How are you? What have you been up to?
Yeah, no, all good. To be honest, working, growing the baby, and enjoying the netball. I can't believe it's almost all over the season.
Yeah, we've been seeing you on Twitter getting involved.
I know, well, I usually am not really much of a tweeter, but I think because there's so many games, and when you're out of it, not usually talking to all of the girls around in each round, I just thought, right, I'll just go to Twitter with it, see if people agree with what I want to say. But it's hard tweeting. I'll write something and then get rid of it. I'm like, oh, is that controversial?
Well, also, like, you tweet something you think is like a hot take, and then like 30 minutes later, everything backfires on your tweet, and you're like, well, the internet will have it now.
I know. Well, I wrote one like, I think Thunder have arrived, and I was like, you better not go bad now.
Wow, you will talk about that one for sure. Because you also pointed out Karen Gregg's facials, which I thought was pretty hilarious.
They're just so funny. Like, you can just tell exactly. She's actually saying what we're thinking as viewers as well, and her face is just exactly as she's watching it. But I don't think it beats Chelsea Pittman. I think everyone will know the part I mean for Chelsea Pittman losing the game. I've seen a couple of memes of that, and yeah, that probably has to be number one of the funny coach moments.
You know, I think there was Vic I think it was the moment Vic Burgess noticed that Lightning conceded a bonus point to Pulse. I think we could actually do quite a nice little compilation piece, maybe with coaches' clips.
Yeah.
Maybe that one's coming, guys. Watch out. All right. But anyway, let's move on. We've got lots to talk about. You're a busy woman. The news this week. Well, I don't think there's too much compared to last week where we had so much to talk about. I think really the big ticket thing here, Ella, is that we had the news that Ella Bowen joins a list of players that are now confirmed with season-ending injuries. That leaves us actually now with a considerable list. And I think we do move past anecdotal, as it was suggested a couple of weeks ago when we had a chat with Claire Nelson. She sort of pushed back on the idea about squads of 10. But looking at that now, with Ziggy Berger joining it recently, with Beth Akua-Dale, who we haven't really seen as well, I just wanted to put that one back out there, and Raz Quashie. It's not season. We don't know if it's season ending, but she missed a really significant game for Mavericks after pulling up in the game before. Ella, what's your take on it, on this list? It's quite something, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And they're also not just, your ankle sprains or your low-key injury. They're massive season-ending injuries where players are having to then, or clubs are having to then get in your next temporary player. And for many clubs, it's the next player and then the next temporary player. And they're really having to go in to their next-gen squad, or I know there's been lots of talk on social media of people not using their next-gen squad and going to other franchises and the whole deal around that. But it's definitely worth, and I don't know if the MPA are doing it at the moment, reviewing how much the girls are doing week in, week out, and whether I know we've spoken about the international season being way too close to the Super League, and a lot of these players, your Loises and your Pages, who come back off their international season and straight into pre-season, and the impact that's then having on these players long term. And yes, it's going professional, so naturally the players are going to be training week in, week out a whole lot more, but the injury side of it, you'd question what is going in to help prevent all of these injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. And recovery as well, I think, is something that, perhaps when we next get a player on, we'll talk about that with them, because I do just feel that it's not, we move past, maybe the way to look at it isn't just numbers, and, we can create a list and you can see it visually, but actually we are starting to see the quality drop off because these are all big players, like with Mavericks effectively losing an entire defense end and the consequences of that obviously in the game. It's pretty tough. I mean, Ed, have you ever been part of a team where you've lost like a big player and had to sort of go through that as well?
Yeah, I've definitely been a part of teams where you do. When I was at Dragons, on paper our squad was really good, and we lost Gabby Sinclair for pretty much the whole season. And when she did come back in, it did make a massive impact on the team, and because we trained with her in pre-season, and yeah, it does definitely change everything that you've done through pre-season, and then what you're used to, and you've got to then bring someone in. The pressure is then on them to perform and just all of a sudden just be okay with performing, yet having not really have been involved in the team throughout. But yeah, you are right. We're seeing the impact with Mavericks, who were, and they still are a really exciting team, but we probably all can agree that the game on the weekend was really disappointing and not what you would expect of a top 4 team. But with, like you said, that they've just had injury after injury after injury. What else do you expect? We can't expect these new players coming in to just be. I actually thought Keris Finn did a really good job coming in, but you can't expect them to be doing the likes of what you would expect a contracted player to do.
Yep. Yeah, I think whatever we say about injury, whatever conclusions are drawn, whatever data is used, I think the big picture is that it did impact this season. It's not over, but it has played a massive hand in how teams have gone. And I think we can talk about Panthers as well, like what they managed to pull off and what they could still pull off potentially, even with the injuries that they've had. What they could have been, I think, is the other, in the land of hypothetical, but. Anyway, that to me, I don't know if you noticed if you had any news agenda items, Ella, but that to me was the big one for this week.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with the injury. And I just guess the impact that it is having on these other teams, Mavericks being the big one, of really showing the impact of injury on performance.
All right, then, let's get into round 13, into the nitty gritty. Well, quite nicely, maybe for I think the first time this season, we had a game a night. So
I know,
you could
I really loved
sit
it.
and enjoy it.
Yeah. Thursday through to Sunday, I was like, right, what time are we now? Get to the next game.
You didn't have no double screen, nothing. You could just commit.
There's nothing worse. Whoever's putting those times together, Saturday night, both at 6 o'clock. What are you thinking?
It is a nightmare, isn't it? I really don't like it. What do you do when they're on at the same time? How do you play it?
I do watch my preferred game, and then I just watch the next one straight after. And to be fair, on my Twitter, I don't usually get the scores come up. But I am one where I just like to know what's going on. So when I am watching the game at the start, I'll just jump to the final score so I kind of can get a feel for what's going on in the game.
I know exactly what you mean. I can't like block everything out. I have to know.
Someone is bound to message me as well saying, did you see this? Or did you see when this happened? Like, no, I'm watching the other game.
Yeah, that was me as well, wasn't it, to you during that when the Rhinos gap happened?
Stop. I'm not on that game yet. I think that was when I was like 2 days behind.
Sorry. Ended up being one of the games of the season, so I think
Yes, it did.
I'm maybe
It
entitled
did.
to message you there. Okay, well, first one, which ended up, I think, really setting the tone for the rest of the weekend. Obviously, it was this massive, massive game, Nottingham Forest versus Panthers at the Motorpoint, and Notts somehow, Ella, managed to, I think I'm going to use this word, spaff a 12-goal lead, and they lost to Panthers 69-75, therefore ending their top 4 chase. What do you reckon?
Well, I was actually really behind Forest to get in the top 4. Hats off to Mavs, glad they're there, but Forest, there's something about them that I've really enjoyed this season. I think maybe because just Rolene just turns and shoots from absolutely anywhere, and exactly what she did then. But 12 goals to then lose a game, it was just, I found it really frustrating to watch because they do such good things and then so quickly let that lead go. Panthers did do some good stuff, but I don't actually think they did enough to get back in a deficit like that. I actually think Forest gave a lot of it away to them just through silly errors, so many footwork calls, which I know we've seen across all of the season. But yeah, gutted for them really, because I actually think they've had a really good run this season. But really exciting to see what they can do. Hopefully, if they can retain as many players as they can going into next season, if they can just keep building, they've got a nice young squad there. So really exciting.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting because I don't know if it's like a fairness thing where you almost expect the team that took out Loughborough Lightning twice and took out Pulse should be in a top four, but then actually Mavericks on paper did their work against teams that Forest lost to, which is obviously the maths. The maths is the maths. But I wondered your thoughts on the substitutions from Forest, because I don't know for me if they were the right ones at the right time, particularly thinking about the time when Iona Christian actually just came off the court. I don't know that was the right play. Neve Cooper at centre. What did you think?
Yeah, I think I tweeted at that because I think, was it the half-time change where Christian and I was like, what? She's winning you balls, she's playing the ball all the way down court. You wondered, I did think, did she pick up an injury halfway through that second quarter or something like that? I just... that I just don't think that change worked for them. I also think Henshaw should be getting so much more court time than what she is. I know they were utilising her just for the super shots, but we hardly really saw her during that game, and it was really frustrating to watch them doubling on to Strutka and then there just not being much of an option. I actually think Rhea put up more volume of shots that game, which was good, but I think it was disappointing not to see as much Freya Henshaw as what we previously have done. And then uncharacteristically Brie Grierson made quite a lot of errors during that game too, and I think the change came with Iona, which for me just didn't quite make sense. It was just the part of the court to change. But I can't really fault the defence end. Love the defence end for Forest. I think they've come together really nicely, which is good. What did you think? What do you think of the changes?
Yeah, I think I think obviously, as you point out, like Brie Grierson was coughing up ball, so I think a change needed to come, and so that was when we saw Neve Cooper come on to centre. But I think that slows the ball down for Forest, therefore helping Panthers come in, run through ball, which they started doing a bit more. I think after the half time they came out much stronger, and unsurprisingly, actually, that's how they kind of did it to Forest the first time when they met. They came out massive in the second half and took the game that way. To me, the other thing was, in terms of substitutions, the one that didn't happen, that, and probably to do with depth, is that Gabby Sinclair ran riot to me. Like, maybe had the best game that she's had all season.
Yeah.
She was good in the first half, but in the second she kind of just said, hang on, I got this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see Pavlin stopping it.
Yeah.
And that centre pass to goal from Panthers was just too easy in the end. And I think plus the work that Jazz Brown and Gabby Coffey were doing on Strutka, as you pointed out, the 2-on, I think that's some of the best 2-on we've seen all season in the super shot zone. And that, Jazz Brown one end finding ball really well, I think, on the circle edge.
Yeah.
Plus that kind of Sinclair just helping, and Creek as well, but I think Sinclair really ran the show, kind of just did it.
Sinclair is such a clever player. She is very much able at half time to be able to step up the game, and coaches will say it all of the time that don't ever keep repeating what you're doing, because the team will understand what you're doing, and then you need to change it to make them think again. There's something Thunder are really good at. They will constantly change what they're doing to make the teams adapt, and Gabby is very able to do that. She's been played over in SSN, so she had a pretty good first half, and then you just saw her just up just to the next intensity, and you are right, Forest just didn't quite adapt to that. Alongside, I don't think we would have noticed it maybe as much if all of the attacking errors weren't going on, but it just added to the fact that Sinclair was getting more balls, so was able just to find her form, find her movement. Jazz was just hunting for fun. So Yeah, just so disappointing for Forest. I would like to see Cooper. I mean, Leighton's had a really good season, but Neve Cooper is more of that wing defence first position, and we haven't necessarily seen her there. She is a defensive centre, and I think in that game when you've got a Panthers team that are firing, Forest needed that down their attacking end, so you want your speed to almost combat what Forest are doing too, rather than slow down. When their attack slowed down, it allowed Jazz Brown to be able to see the game, and that's when she started to come up with more intercepts, because it gave her time to read where the ball was going.
Yeah, and I think Tripp actually took McGee off, and then
Yeah.
Wellington came on and was really effective too. So I think that
Yes.
also that was a clever change, just to put that pressure more on the front to keep the attacking errors coming. So yeah, look, another I think smart performance from Panthers, because they'd had one the week before as well. So they're the team that have got the most bonus points off other teams. As we were saying kind of earlier, the kind of really unlucky that they had the injuries that they've had, because we're starting to see now performances from players that if we'd had from the beginning, they might have been in top four contention. They were kind of still in it with a fair amount of rounds,
Yeah.
rounds in.
No, they have a very good team. On paper, I think we all thought at the start of the year, most people had Panthers within their top four. They've been hit with injury and have fallen short, I think, on a couple of occasions, and now we're starting to see them come together for what they can gel. So it'll be interesting to see what they can hold on to. Obviously, we could see Tripp is leaving at the end of the season, so it'll be interesting what happens there, who's coming in, who gets retained, because they do have a good core group there.
Yeah, it's that 1 year, 2 year contract situation that
which
we
no
don't
one knows
know.
about. Who's on a one? Who's on a two? Who knows?
Yeah, and when you don't have a coach,
Yeah.
that must make recruitment a bit harder. Like, what are players moving for? What are players staying for? I think
Hard
that's
for a player, I think, in that position if you are a two-year contract and your coach leaves halfway through. Be interesting to know actually if there's anything within the contract when that happens. There probably isn't, because you sign up to it, but it's tough for a player then if a coach comes in and you've had history with them, or their vision isn't for you in the squad, but you're on a 2-year contract and that's kind of automatically pushing you towards the bench. It's yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually to your
Interesting.
point, Lauren Palmer actually kind of had to deal with that. She
Yeah.
taking on a team that she didn't recruit, and we'll talk about that because I think that's a bit of the story of that game. But yeah, it is interesting. That is a very compelling point. The fact that if you're on a 2 year and your coach, as you say, you might have history, or that is fascinating. But then this result kind of then takes a bit of the punch out of Mavericks versus Lightning, because suddenly Mavericks don't have to fight for this bonus point that they had to initially, and they had a really tough run in with Lightning and Thunder. But then also we had the news that Raz Quashi, after pulling up in the game the last week, wasn't available. And I think Paul and I in the preview of it had said that's a tough gig for Izzy Phillips and for Gemma Donahue, Samantha Wallace-Joseph, but for Keris Finn, who did step in and do that, like the age experience gap is enormous.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was tough. A really difficult game to watch, actually. I thought. What did you think?
I just, I thought, Karis Finn, well done, coming in against the goal shooter who is, up there with on top form right now. And I just think she just cracked on, she just got on with it, and she did a really good job. And I mean, Sammy Wallace-Joseph, she is in some fine form at the moment. So, really exciting to see what she can do when it comes towards this business end of the season. I just find it a really frustrating game, to be honest. I know Mavs have obviously experienced an injury, but, the scoreline, I thought, gosh, is this going to... I think it was within 20 in quarter two. So it was a bit... I was like, oh, gosh... if there had been another game on at the same time, I probably would have switched to the other game, just because Loughborough were just clean and the basics were just there. I did think from a Loughborough side it would have been nicer to see them get Ella Clark's, Bella Bayless's on for more court time when the scoreline was, the game was done really in quarter two. it frustrated me that, your Bella Bayless got 5 minutes in quarter four. I think she's such a good upcoming player and deserved more court time there. But the Mavericks' errors they were beaten by a very, very good Loughborough side, and it really showed the impact that injury can have on teams. And you would have watched the Mavericks, and I think we all were a little bit disappointed that they are a top four side with that. But there's two sides to it. There was some play that was poor from Mavericks, but also the whole defence end has been wiped out this season, which is, you'd never, if you would have put their team now versus their team at the start of the season, it's completely different.
Well, I think on that front, another way to think about it is like, imagine London Pulse without Fumi, Halley and Zara Everett.
Yeah.
Like, it's not London Pulse anymore.
Yeah.
That defence is their identity, and I think Raz Quashie, Vicky Oyesola have a great partnership. Chelsea Batman was the young exciting prospect from Australia. Like, as they get to this top four goal that this club have had for ages, that Raz has come out and said, I've been chasing this for 10 years, to then not be in a position, potentially, we don't know what the full situation is with Raz, to be fighting for it. I think it is quite devastating. And I think from Lightning, it was a good rebound sort of win. And I think what they did that was really interesting to me was they did a great job on Susie Liversidge, and no one has really done that to the extent that they did. And actually for Mavericks, there was another red flag there for me, because it was like, what do the rest of the cast do when Susie Liversidge gets taken out? Because she is that playmaker for them, and we know that she handles so much ball. You only need to look at the sort of feed standings to see that. But it's a bit like, I don't know, maybe this is a strange comparison to make, but Liz Watson, right? She always has to ride that kind of pressure when she plays for Australia, but then that's when her centre will kind of, make it difficult to do the split, like to really, okay, well, if you're going to double up here, I'll run the show here. And it didn't feel like Mavericks were quite ready for that. There wasn't a plan B for that. And then ultimately they took Susie off and they put Amelia Hall on, which was great to see, because Amelia Hall we haven't really seen for quite a long time. But that, to me, is like Lightning thinking the work that's going on behind the scenes. We know that they're quite an astute side when it comes to structures and stuff like that, but the execution, I think Vic Burgess would have been really delighted with that, the way that unfolded.
Yeah, what do you think about the Amelia Hall and the court time that she's kind of had? I definitely prefer in the goal attack role. And she did come on in the wing attack role, and it was, even though they gave Susie the break, they needed her back on, definitely.
I think there's a lot of English goal attackness or goal attack wing attackness at Mavericks, and almost to the point where they're kind of hoarding in a sense, because you've got Emma Thacker, Kira Rothwell, Amelia Hall and Susie Liversidge. Obviously Susie Liversidge doesn't play goal attack anymore, but you take that off the table for a bunch of other clubs that have international shooters. That's quite a lot, but there's no way to me that you keep all of that happy and well rotated. And I think I remember watching Amelia Hall at the Forest game the first time they played, and she did a great job there. But it looks to me, even though Amelia Andrew, to me, I don't know how you feel about it, she looks like she is being held together by string. She's
constantly wincing, isn't she? I don't know if it was the last game or the game before. This was the one where I was tweeting and then undoing it, because I thought, if there's something going on behind the scenes, I don't want to start anything. But she was really wincing every single time that she was landing. I also think for Amelia, she'd moved from Rhinos, and actually Rhinos need a goal attack. So for her, and everyone has got to do time on the bench. I really, really do believe in that. But she has played in Super League before and is good enough to be on the court. Yes, you're exactly right. She does sit behind some very good English Roses scorched goal shooters as well. But it's just almost frustrating in a way. She may have moved on her own terms, but I also think she would have had a really good season at Rhinos this year if she'd have stayed. So you are right. It's very hard to hold on to players.
And as the coach change that happened as well with Rhinos too, like she might have moved and then that happened, and it's interesting though that even with 10 you can still have this dilemma.
I always feel though with 10 you're almost unlucky when it's your position that's overloaded, because then that means there's another court area where you're just chilling, you're in the starting seven. There may be another change that could come, but that's only with the other person that's on court. It might be the centre and the wing defence that would just interchange with each other, whereas it's unfortunate for those shooters that it's good because they'll have constant competition through training, but it does mean that somewhere else in the team there is people that don't have that challenge that those other players are having.
And this is also super shot territory as well. Like still a new rule, still a new part of the league. You're still a shooter coming on expected to do that. I always think that is a tougher gig coming off the bench doing that.
Yeah,
it is it's an interesting one, and it'll be like you said. Well, we talked about in the previous game about recruitment, what happens there for Mavericks for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, they will plough on, obviously, with Thunder to go. We don't know, again, as we said, the full situation with Rasquashi, but at the end of the day, that was a 21 goal defeat for a team that are both top four sides. And I that's where I come back around to that injury thing and go, yeah, this is surely not what the league wanted. In the interests of overall like competition, this is kind of a disaster. Anyway, we move on to, this was a very, very juicy game on paper, and I think it delivered on court as well. Thunder Pulse. Pulse ended up taking the win by 10, so more than in their previous meeting, which was by 5. Up in Manchester as well, so a big away win for London Pulse. That also shifted them top of the table, and we'll come on to talk about that, Ella, but that puts them in a really strong position to actually end up finishing top of the regular season. Let me know your thoughts, because you were tweeting about this one.
Yeah, I thought Pulse came out strong. I think they were 4-0 up straight away. And then it was something like 7-2, and it just seemed straight away that they had the control over Thunder. Thunder just couldn't quite find their feet. There was errors, not really working together in each other's space. We know that Reed is obviously coming back from injury. She's getting a lot said about her on Twitter at the moment too, which is hard. It's never ever easy being a player that comes back from injury. Paige is a great player. She's so smart, but is finding her feet, and it's really hard to do right down the business end of the season. You've got to be able to do it quick. So yeah, lots for Karen Gregg to think about with kind of who's starting when it comes to towards this end of the season. But it was just very uncharacteristic, I think, by Thunder. So many errors from across the whole of the court. I thought that Nicola Smith was a really clever move to drop her back. I think at goal defence she was just starting to get a little bit lost, and then was able to just turn so much ball and read the game when she went back to goalkeeper. I know she got player of the match, but I think Aaliyah McCormack actually allowed Nicola to be able to turn as much ball as she did. So I thought she would have actually been my player of the match too, because I thought she obviously scored defence. No, she was setting up Nicola very, very nicely, and you can see that all the off the ball stuff. So yeah, that was good. And Pulse are just looking. I thought Liv Sheen looks so much more comfortable now. I think she's had a few off games for her, and just seemed to find her form. Sophie Kelly, such a good start, I think, for her. For her past 2 games, she's just absolutely stood out. So yeah, she's been good time to start getting yourself into the starting 7 towards this end of the season. What about you? What did you think of it?
Well, I was going to say, would you now keep Kelly as your starting goal attack going forward?
Yeah, I think she's earned it. She hasn't showed signs that she's not ready for it, and I think with someone like Nicole to come on is experienced enough to, if Sophie is having a wobble at any point during the next few rounds, she should be experienced enough to be able to come on and then take over the job. So I also think it's a good competition I'm sure it's healthy competition between them both at the moment, where if Nicole has watched Sophie now across 2 games really, really deliver, close to player of the match. She must have been in that last game. Did get it, didn't she, in the previous game? So hopefully Nicole, if she does then get that next opportunity, comes in and is saying, "You're not taking me off the court again." So definitely healthy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think It's a great performance from London Pulse for sure. Like to do that over Thunder. I think Thunder there was turnover ball, as you said, like Nicola Smith. I wonder if also playing goal defense enhances the goalkeeper game, like has made her able to read things from further out coming in. But undoubtedly, McCormick is. God, isn't she like one of the most like tenacious
Dogged.
players
Yeah.
out there?
If you're a tired goal attack and she is running on you, then
Totally, like, and the size as well. And I think that's what's so the potential in that back end. You know, it would have been really. I'm sure Karen Gregg will rue not having Nick Smith in pre-season, just to really have like solidified these combinations a lot earlier on, because it is so much height and it is so much range.
Yeah.
And with Taylor McKevitt, if you have her at wing defense, like she's another like kind of honey badger-esque character out there. But I think to your point about Sophie Kelly, I think in a way we can make that point. You can take her and Paige Reed and sort of step back a bit and say, well, Sophie Kelly almost waited an entire season to work her way to the start of the goal attack bib and then be ready to step up at this level when Pulse needs something. I think we all agree they needed something new as well. That 7 that they had been found out.
yeah.
But Paige Reed is someone that would not have that luxury because of the injury. She's almost doing like the reverse job.
Yeah.
Like she's expected to have not done anything all season and come on and start. And I think it probably bears mentioning, but when a player is cleared, you can't temporarily replace them anymore. So Karen Gregg has to make use of the player that she contracted to her 10. Like that's the decision she made at the start of the season. That's the more enduring part of this injury problem for Thunder, and it will be the case if Lois Pearson comes back. If Lois Pearson is cleared within the next couple of games, that means Shannon Malik isn't in the squad anymore, because that's the role that Shannon Malik is playing. So it's not like there's a 12, it's a 10. So you have to give minutes. And I think there was some frustrations online. And to me, Ella, actually, just as an aside, I do find X Twitter more toxic. Feels players are getting more targeted comments this year than before. I don't know how you feel about that. Are you somebody that looks online at your performance?
Yeah, it's really hard not to. I think if all players are honest, it's really hard. And you know it's going to happen, and people have their right to put their opinion online. And people may have seen Georgia Rowe react to some comments that have been said. And there's, we are media trained as well to do it in a professional way back. But as that happens, there may be that back and forth, and you've got to expect it as it goes professional. But yeah, I think Paige, especially at the weekend, did get a hell of a lot of those comments, and it's hard as players. No one's purposely not having the game of their life. Everyone is trying to put their best foot forward, but I think we're in that in between in the sport, where people are saying no, you shouldn't be passing your opinion like that on players, whereas in football it obviously happens all of the time, but online is toxic anyway.
Yeah, it's a complicated space.
Yeah.
For me, it's like if you find yourself tweeting about the same player multiple times, saying the same thing multiple times, maybe that's where you're like, maybe take a step back.
I think there's just a way to also say it. If rather than it being a really personal attack on the player, it needs to be more constructive within the game. Like, the basics aren't good enough from this player, must be struggling coming back from injury. Just more, rather than just a personal attack of you're purposely trying to let us down, just a bit more pulled back.
Yep.
And you are right, obviously, about, Karen Gregg she's starting Paige in that instance because she is her contracted player, and if they get Lewis back, they will have to make a decision then on who is going to start. Shannon Malik won't be in that squad. She's had a great season, but ultimately she's not contracted, and that'll probably be really hard for her to take too, because she's contributed so much to the Thunder side. But ultimately, the game is the game. You're not contracted in, and now the injured players are back in. So I think actually Karen giving her players minutes as they're coming back in is smart. Otherwise, if she hadn't, and everyone is back in for next week or the week after, then they haven't been exposed, and you need that warm up time. Even if your likes of Lois does come back in, she's going to need to take that warm up time still. And yeah, you can't just be expected to come back in and have the absolute game of your life. It's just unrealistic, I think. I know we train in, week out, but you don't when you're injured. So
Yep. No, I think that's, and someone like Lois hasn't played since January at this point. So if she comes back in, it's like 5 months later. You know, I think I think Thunder fans would love her to come on, like, and she hasn't come on yet, so we'll see. But yeah, I definitely think, you know, and it has an impact on the players also, as you mentioned, Shannon. But you know, El Murray has, I think, deserves flowers, really, her flowers, for the way that she's had to navigate a front end that's kind of permanently changing. It's not what she signed up for, probably, when she signed up to play for Thunder as well. Like, this season, that wasn't the service that she was expecting. And to then have to manage someone coming back in on managed minutes, and then a 17-year-old, and then, you know, that's a tough gig. And I think Pulse, to their credit, really, like, defensively made Thunder made it hard. Like, Fumi, I thought, was outstanding on El Murray. You know, Hallie kind of floating at the front and Fumi right back on her, like tipping the balls coming in, just a menace. And that kind of, you can't have I don't think Thunder, you know, that kind of front end, having that struggle at that point with a player, you know, all this sort of stuff going on.
Yeah.
I'm sure somewhere Karen Gray's going, we might play you again, and that's when it's going to count. Here, I just need to get through this.
Yeah.
Which is, again, like, one of the weird constructions of this league, I guess, is, and we've said it on this podcast, certainly, like, that top four is this postseason as a whole other competition. So, you know, teams are thinking about that now. Thunder's thinking about that now. So I'm sure they would have loved to have taken the win, but they'll probably take the exposure here as well, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, who knows? Who knows what Thunder will come up with their next few couple of team sheets, but it'll be definitely exciting. I think Thunder deserve it. They deserve, hopefully, where the fitness levels are at in their team, for their contracted players to come back in if they are fit. But again, like you said, it's another thing for El Murray to have to think about. She had the pressure all on her during the Pulse game. Even when you add your Loises back in, it's another thing for those players to have to think about and gel. We can't just expect Thunder to then, Lois is back in and now they're back to where they were. It's going to take that growth and time together, as whether they have the time together to do it or not.
The other thing also that struck me was this is quite a really low scoring game. And I think the time they met previously was also very, like, sort of in the 50s as well. So there's clearly something about the way these two meet. And I think that's something Paul and I were kind of drawing out, is there does seem to be the way two sides match up in this league does seem to, like, you get ones that just don't really go together and ones that go really well together.
Yeah.
It is interesting. Yeah. Right. Well, then that left us with the last game of the round, Dragons versus Rhinos. Dragons took the win there, 60-52. Ella, this was 7 versus 8, but a really entertaining game. And actually, you know, no one wants to be at the bottom of the table. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, no, I was looking forward to this one. It was 7 versus 8. You'd think then that's going to be a really good game. Glad for Dragons having more of that super shot threat. Now Georgia Rowe putting up more of those super shots. Just feel like Rhinos just didn't quite respond. I think Dragons went up quite quickly and just... It felt a little bit to me just like a bit of a training game. There was a lot of errors, you know, the ball hitting the wall, just a hell of a lot going on in terms of your basics, which I guess you maybe don't necessarily get to see, you wouldn't expect to see at this stage. And I thought the Dragons just punished Rhinos for the errors that they were making all the way through. I think it was... Rhinos don't have that solid goal attack that they can rely on to really show what Joyce can do. I think she's incredible, Joyce, when she does just do just turn and shoot. There's a lot. I feel like there's a whole lot of pressure on her when she isn't the one taking the shot. I would love to have seen Egbaron come on for longer during that. I think if she'd actually had more court time throughout the whole season, she would have developed a whole lot more this year. But yeah, I don't know what it was for Rhinos. It just felt really flat. You wanted them to almost get in a team huddle and them to almost be told off. Like your fans are here to watch you, and you almost just look half-assed, like you don't want to be here. It was just it was, it just didn't seem quite like them, and it was frustrating to watch when it was meant to be a very good clash to have, but there just was no oomph from the Rhino side. Did you feel that? Because
Yeah, I did. And actually, also, Jiva Mental's last home game, it
yeah,
didn't seem
yeah,
to, sort of have much of an impact. And I think the fact that Lauren Palmer pulled the change at centre in the first quarter, just a few
yeah,
minutes in, and then pulled the timeout trigger really shortly after that was, as you say, like maybe to try and go like to
you
just give
did,
everybody a bit of a shake, like
yeah,
hang on. Because I thought Dragons in that first half defensively were just stunning. Like, I
yes,
mean, I'm not sure the balls going in were like the best feeds, but Alex Johnson with Jackie Newton, they were just like, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll
yeah,
have
yeah,
that. It was Casey Chouani getting in and getting stuck in the midcourt. Because I think for me, that was the issue, was like the midcourt and the goal attack
yeah,
area, as you pointed out, all was not working, which therefore kind of gave Dragons a 12-goal lead in the second quarter, which is a position we haven't really seen Dragons actually kind of in nearly all season. But yeah, I think at half time, Rhinos came out a bit stronger,
yeah,
but Dragons were not going to concede that
no,
lead. So I know I'm with you. I just think it's because I kind of called Rhinos out a bit against the performance against London Pulse last week, because to me it was like, this is not indicative. Or was it last week? I can't remember, honestly, Ella.
no,
The season is long, but when they played Pulse, I came back out of that thinking that is not indicative of a team that's
yeah,
now been together for months. Like,
yeah,
what's going on with that? And it felt like this as well. So, are there players in that team that should have Super League 10 contracts? I think that's now the question. No doubt Rhinos are asking,
yeah,
and no doubt I think fans are asking as well, because it's just sort of like, as you say, like I want at least for you to want to be there. And maybe this is tough to say, but there is certainly, there's something not right there. And we, and as I've already said in this podcast, like Lauren Palmer comes into this team very late, has to pick it up. They had a really great Super Cup performance, but it just seems to me like the trajectory
tailed off.
is not trending up. Whereas I
No.
think for Dragons, that's exactly what it's done.
Yeah, and
So
I'm glad Dragons were up by 12 because they deserve to be, and the performance that Rhinos were putting out was just so not there. And I'm glad Dragons were actually able to show the fact that they are just going to punish you if you're going to put poor feeds in, do footwork, pass a lateral ball across the central foot, the middle third, like just lots of little bits throughout that game where you're like, oh, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? Like, and it probably is, I think Palmer's face when it went to her on the bench was just like, what am I meant to do here now? And so, yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with them next year. I thought they had a really good start to the season, but lots of performances have just tailed off and not really impressed, compared to what some other players that are sitting on benches at other franchises are doing when they're invited on for your 5 minutes at the end of the game, are doing more than some getting your 60 minutes for Rhinos. So it was a disappointing game and just a bit like and Dragons that they absolutely deserve the win. I wish it was. I do wish it was by more. They Rhinos started to find some form, but yeah, it would have been nice to see Dragons kind of hold that lead. But really good that they're starting to play more with that super shot.
excellent. Well, I think, Ella, we'll call that review reviewed. Round 13 ticked off. Now, before we move on to preview the final round of the season, which feels almost ridiculous to say, we actually got the opportunity to catch up with England Netball's Jess Thirlby a little bit after, the dust had settled on the England squad. And I was at work, but abroad. So Paul picked this one up. And so you will get Paul in this episode, everybody. Don't worry for those missing his wonderful hot takes. So we'll give that a listen, and here it is.
I'm delighted to say now that joining us for the first time ununlocked. Every time we speak to anyone, it's an unlocked debut, so we like to give them the big billing like that. But actually, this is the England Roses head coach, Jess Thirlby. You don't need any more billing than that, Jess. How are you? And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks, and thanks for having me on. I've been linking in with all of your shows up until now, so yeah, feel lucky to have been asked to come on. So thanks for having me.
No, that's good. And look, we wanted to try and catch up around the sort of England squad, and we'll get into that shortly. But firstly, because it's the first time we've had a chance to chat, and this is coming off the back of another sort of dramatic night in the Super League, how have you been enjoying it this year? Because obviously Forest Panthers on Thursday night sort of settled everything, but in a way that's kind of had just as much drama as the season.
Yeah, no, you're right. I did enjoy the viewing last night. I had to put one of my children to bed and kind of missed the whole bit where Panthers. I started putting him to bed 10 down for Panthers and came back and they were 1 up. So yeah, I've obviously had to go back and watch that back. But yeah, look, I think the season's thrown up some like really interesting stories, hasn't it? I think Panthers up until now, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, earning the most bonus points, but taking both scalps against Nottingham Forest, and then Nottingham Forest taking both scalps against Loughborough Lightning. So that kind of Midlands, we much anticipated kind of like competition as we went into NSL 2.0 has really played out nicely, and Panthers obviously taken on Loughborough. So yeah, I think it was a brilliant example of some of the kind of stories within the season and how they've unfolded. And obviously, London Mavericks getting into the top 4 for the first time in a long time as a result of last night's result. So, yeah, really, really interesting and sets us up for some brilliant final matches. But also, obviously, we're looking ahead now to semi-finals and what is our new prelim final as well.
As far as sort of translating that to England is concerned, it feels like an obvious question, but how important to have that sort of thriving and competitive domestic competition to kind of give you those options and being able to test the players?
Yeah, definitely. Look, the moments in the game where it swings like that, like it tells you a lot about the players, the ones who kind of show up in those moments, the ones that maybe step back a little bit. So I'm always going to be watching it through that lens. And having recently announced the team, obviously I'm really scrutinising like how those players do, but I'm keeping a really broad view as to how others have kind of really stood up for their club teams, because it's one thing playing for your club and fitting in that style of play, and then it's another for us in terms of benchmarking our selection against international demands of the game. And there is a difference, sometimes quite significant. And I think we've had some remarkable games this year, and even kind of yesterday, the game I covered between Panthers and Mavericks last weekend, the swings in the games and quarters are quite big. And that's aside from before we even talk about Super Shot, it obviously contributes to that. And I think that most probably is something that isn't, at international level, we just can't prepare or assume that we can get out of jail with a swing like that in terms of the quarters. But it's certainly given more theatre to the Super League matches this year, and as teams are navigating the Super Shot as well. But for us internationally, those things are quite different, and our kind of 1 point game and the need to give little or no ball away against the world's best like Australia is quite a different challenge to some of what we observe in Super League. But nonetheless, competition aplenty, and really good to see some of those new teams like a Nottingham Forest kind of make such a great statement of intent in their first year as well.
I think you touched on it a little bit there, and obviously it feels like there's a second game within a game with the Super Shots coming. I've heard your sort of comments through commentary throughout the year. Not necessarily like how do you feel about it, but obviously Super Shot from a tactics point of view, and also the tactical timeouts. These are different things that perhaps you don't get the opportunity to have in international netball. Do you foresee a time where that might change?
Yeah, look, I think we always have to be ready for that change. I think internationally, obviously, the governance through World Netball would determine any rule changes, and they've got pretty robust processes to do that. So we are constantly kind of vigilant to any changes on the horizon from an international perspective. But when I've been asked before, like with the Super Shot, I think it can both close a game and it can blow out a game. So I think at the minute we've kind of most probably seen a bit of both. And both of them bring their drama. You obviously just hope that you go deep into games before results are known. But I think, the tactical timeouts are really interesting because I'm a big believer that as a coach, you kind of set your team up in the preparation phase. And once they step out onto court, the influence you can have on a game is less, but nonetheless still very significant in terms of change of personnel or being so clear with any feedback in terms of action focus. But often those tactical timeouts have been really used very well to break momentum, haven't they, of the opposition team. And I think there's been some great examples of the smarts, but from both the athletes, but also the coaches in terms of doing that to the other side. So will it come into international? Who knows? But we're kind of ready. We're vigilant of that. And I think we're well stocked from a super shot point of view. I think we've got players now that have played both in Australia and here with that rule in mind. And I think, there have been some sticky moments, I think, defensively as to how best to kind of tactically target and limit the opportunities. I think Rolling Strucker was another great example last night that despite the efforts of Panthers, she still seemed to find her way into that 2-point zone with 2 defenders on her. So I think that's where my curiosities lies. How can I best help the defenders to really limit the opportunities of such a prolific 2-point shooter?
On to the England squad itself, Jess. You obviously named your squad for 25-26. I'm sure, obviously, there's lots goes on behind the scenes. How exciting to now actually have that out and be public with it, and then obviously over the months ahead, build towards the Commonwealth Games, right? Because that's what you want. You want the top competition.
Yeah, look, I'm so pleased that we have got the Commonwealth Games kind of secured because, as you will know, it was so uncertain for such a long period of time and actually quite late for nations to be told and sports if they were going to be in it. So we feel really lucky as one of the only team sports now to really represent Team England in that Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. And as we all know, the Commonwealth Games hold such special memories for us, not least the 2018, but also despite our 4th place finish in Birmingham, the way in which the country got behind us was such an incredible experience. And so we're really determined to deliver better for our fans this time around, with our little eye on 2027 and wanting to win that World Cup gold that's eluded us so far. So, yeah, so excited to kind of welcome back. I think we've got 19 returning athletes to the programme, but some of those players are still very young in their journey. You've got like a Berry Neal and a Liv Cheen who have kind of really broken onto the scene in the last kind of 12 to 18 months. And so super exciting to know that we've still got that kind of point of difference, that youth, that energy in the team. But we've also got those really experienced players. And what I think you guys will have seen as fans is like really forming the backbone of a team by which we just need to now celebrate the tactical diversity that we've got in the team that we've selected. And then those kind of 5 new players, the Emma Rayners, the Yomi Wilsons, the Anya Williams, Sasha Glasgow returning and Jazz Brown. I think year on year for the time I've been in this role for 6 years, those points of difference that come into the team really help to elevate and challenge those incumbent players. But we do a really good job, as does Fran, Beth, the leadership player group, in terms of embracing that and hopefully people feeling that real sense of belonging, because every single player in this named team deserves their place on merit. How they get there has been very different and obviously lots of talking points, but I'm really excited by the talent. I think we've got an age range of 18 up to 32. We've got a multitude of debutantes with multiple cap players and that average age of 25, which is not a make or break thing, but it's kind of spoken of in sport as being most probably a pretty good average age to go into 2 tournament years with. So yeah, can't wait to get to work with them. And as you say, we're busy kind of for months, off the back of the international season, and as soon as Super League starts, we're observing every minute of every player. We've got an assessor group who we're really grateful to, who are helping assess every minute played. And we have some really rigorous conversations and processes through the season to make sure that we feel we select the best squad to give us the best chance of success. So yeah, can't wait till August when I get my hands and eyes back on some of them.
You mentioned it a little bit there. It feels to me, at least, as someone who's sort of covered netball for the last sort of 10 years, that there was a little bit more chat and maybe a little bit more public kind of declarations as to why some players maybe did or didn't declare. Can you just I think that's kind of always been a bit sketchy for netball fans and people out there. How does that process play out for you? I know there's certain things you might not be able to say, but how does that process work?
Yeah, well, I think in terms of like the actual selection process, when teams register their squads of 10 at the start of the year, we simply just make sure part of that tells us who's English eligible, because there may be players unknown to us that actually do hold British passports. And if the Roses programme or future Roses programme is something they at least want to be considered for. And I think in previous years, when I came into the job, every player was a consideration, and that is still the case. But I think what we do is, rather than mislead every single player in the league, that felt a little bit wrong. And we tried to give the players a bit of a voice as to maybe this isn't for them. And we're making some assumptions here that every single player wants to play for England. That's not always the case. So then we kind of scan the talent, and we create a bit of a long list. And we go out to, let's say on average, 60 players for whom we feel are showing a trajectory or high potential or current performance standards that best fit with the benchmark of international netball. I've already commented on it. You know, our metrics and our benchmarks, the positional profile of what world's best looks like, is not always synonymous with what we're seeing week on week in the Super League. And so you absolutely, and I'm a champion of those players who have played for a club for a long time, who are ingrained in what the club need them to do. That may or may not always line up with what the demands are for us to win a gold medal against Australia in 2 years' time. So it's our job to kind of get underneath our what it takes to win model and do some best guesses and forecasts around what we think is more likely. And we're never going to be certain on that. We can't be, but we've got some really good objective data, coach insight. And obviously we live and breathe the international windows and know what those demands are like. So we go out to that long list, and then we invite them to put their expression of interest in. So it's still done on merit. It's still done by inviting players to have a voice if it is something they want us to consider them for. And I think we had like a 95% return rate. So all those athletes we invited to express an interest, 95% of them said yes, please. And then we consider their performances again, and then that selection panel decides on who those players are, and we offer them an athlete award to come onto the programme. And even at that point, it's still the player choice as to whether or not they choose to, because it's a hefty commitment and it's a big step up from domestic competition as well. So I think that therein lies, debate is brilliant. I think it's really important that I'd be worried if our fans didn't want to have a voice in debate. But I do think hopefully in opportunities like this, it becomes a little bit clearer whether people agree or not is kind of not, we're never going to reach agreement, and I think it's great that people champion and put people's names out there and say, why not her? But ultimately, I'd like to think I can reassure people that our process is really rigorous. We have a finger on the pulse in terms of what beating Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Jamaica looks like. And we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we're putting players on the programme we think stand the best chance of doing that, as well as playing the Roses way and fitting into the model that we believe has given us the success or the blueprint of success that we then need to continue to evolve.
I think that's a fascinating answer, Jess, and I really appreciate being so candid with it, because we obviously know as the league strives to put itself up there kind of amongst the sort of the other sports, like hearing like sort of honest kind of assessments like that. Opinion and debate is what we want, right? In any sport. So you've obviously named a future squad as well, and there's a really exciting prospect of an under-21 World Cup as well. So what is the definition of a futures squad for you? Are those players who sort of fit into sort of some of the things you just mentioned?
Yeah, look, I think the futures squad, I'm really proud of the work that myself, David Parsons as performance director, Sonia McCloma now as the lead coach in that space, having worked with Roses, really proud of how that programme's evolved, because when I came in, you'd have like a few number of players that weren't ready for Roses, but the programme and then the infrastructure around them most probably wasn't what it needed to be to help accelerate their development. The whole point of that Future Roses programme is to help provide support to ready them for the demands of international netball, but first to ready them for the demands of the Roses programme, because there is a gap. The intensity of training across the board here is not what we see in Australia. The domestic competition is more intense. They're afforded to be full-time. And we're on a journey with that through NSL 2.0. And the clubs are making huge strides and efforts to provide them with even more environments outside of Roses, whereby it's more akin to those demands and the intensities needed. And often our players, the shortfall is we don't give them enough rest and recovery. They're balancing multiple things. And I'd say that's the big difference between us and fully professional sports. So we need to train harder. We need to accumulate their tolerance to load. and then increase the intensity of training. And that Future Roses is taking a cohort of players who show high potential to do that, but we need to help them and we need to expose them in a safe way, which means that we first get them ready to tolerate the demands of training. And then the Roses programme should be where we're getting them to tolerate the demands of competition and being tournament ready. We've got the big challenge, which no NSL or SSN club really needs to concern themselves with, which is to play 8 games in 10 days and the last game of the tournament to be our best performance. Like that's kind of very unique. And so the Roses programme and the Future Roses programme are there to prepare them for those unique demands of international sport that we don't expect, and nor should we, for clubs to fully concern themselves with that. But we do need the club environments to become more fully professional, train more often, train harder and recover fully and prevent injury. So yeah, hopefully that helps answer the question. So it's a bit of a holding ground, and it's a real life education and preparation to get them ready for Roses.
Yeah, again, a really good answer. But how do maybe sometimes some of the players who've gone up and maybe come down a little bit sometimes, how do those things work? I mean, I suppose from a football perspective, we see players go from England seniors down to under 21s. Is it a similar kind of thing?
Yeah, look, I think the hope would be that if the system's working really well, we wouldn't want to see that happen too often. And I think that's really fair, and that's certainly kind of like our intention. I think the challenge that we've got because of those kind of gaps that we're chasing is we won't always know with certainty how quickly somebody's development will accelerate. We can't always plan for, the interference from injury and things that might get in the way, the speed bumps. And that development trajectory is really difficult to fully forecast when you've got a young talent. I think we've got a good grip of that. But I think we have got, quite rightly, examples of Alice, Emma, Jada this year, Jada being eligible for the World Youth as well, where they have been on our Roses programme. And some of that is also linked to the succession planning when we're going in and out of World Cup last time. We knew that Jiva would likely retire, Jade would likely retire. We knew that years out. And therefore, we're trying to spot that talent early and start to get them in and around the Roses environment to give ourselves a best chance that in 4 years, they now can take on that bib. And I think with players like that, it's our duty to kind of say, what have we seen in the time that they've been on the Roses programme? What are their needs now and where are those best served? And whilst it's tricky, certainly a tricky space to navigate if you've been in a Roses programme and you're invited to come into Future Roses, from my perspective, that is still driven first by the needs of that player. And actually, whilst it may not feel like it, it is testament to them that we still believe there is potential and that we still need to tap into that. But it's also about where we feel we can best serve that. And also, other people improve, people overtake players from one year to the next. But I think given the age stage and where they're at on their development, that those examples this year we still believe there's more to come. But right now, there's also been other competition around those positions. So it shouldn't happen often. But when it does, I'd like to think, again, we've been really considered with the why we're doing it. And hopefully those players will feel that they benefit from another year on one of our programmes that sets them up to hopefully come back onto Roses.
Is there an element as well of this? We mentioned the sort of Youth World Cup, you want to get people used to winning as well and potentially putting them into that environment where they might go away to a hugely competitive competition and come back. I've covered a lot of football in my career, and I think a big change for England, and I know you've worked with Gareth Southgate a bit, has been the successes of the younger age groups, like under 17s, under 19s, under 21s. Is that something that maybe factors into it?
Yeah, look, I think it is really exciting. We didn't have a World Youth Cup 4 years ago because of COVID, and we've got some work to do as a sport, which we're really invested in to really profile what our most successful athletes' experience and journey has looked like. And I think you're absolutely spot on. Like a World Youth Cup is one, not the only one, but it's one experience that will definitely help along the way, whether it's winning or losing. I just think experience outright is important. So I think the World Youth Cup will be incredibly valuable for those that make it through. We've got such a great bunch of talent in our Next Gen and NPL, and some of which are playing in our NSL. So real high hopes for them to go on. But ultimately, Sonia might disagree with me in a good way. It's not all about outcome for that World Youth Cup. It's outcome and more, because ultimately you would hope that you're going to see those faces later on. The 2018 gold medal winning team were all in a World Youth. A majority of them played World Youth together 10 years earlier. They were really ripe for success, combined with playing here, playing overseas, multiple international experiences together. So I think that World Youth is really important, I would say, alongside something that's been I've really cared about and paid attention to, which is creating experiences in our England A, where teams come over to play our first 12. I want to make sure that another group of players are playing them as well. And I think that's a great space to be able to operate. You find out a lot about more players. They do of themselves, but the results it's not the be all and end all. So it's not the sharp end of performance. So I think all of those experiences are a really important piece to the jigsaw, and really looking forward to seeing athletes shine in the World Youth, and their performance might merit being invited into a Roses or Future Roses environment, if not already named. But we've got some good crossover of our young talent already featuring in both those teams.
As far as the calendar is concerned, we know we've got a Horizon series, dates to be confirmed, but are you pleased with maybe how behind the scenes your schedule's shaping up? Because the reality is the Com Games is now just over 12 months away, and we know that will go quickly.
Yeah, I do know that's going to go quickly. So my sense of urgency every day is not always matched by everyone around me. I think I drive people insane. So I always feel like we're on a bit of a countdown clock. But yeah, the calendar, we've worked so hard at the calendar. It's not an easy space. It's very complex. I know every international team would most probably say the same, but I think because we've got, domestic competitions all sitting in slightly different times of the year. Our biggest opposition, obviously, in Australia and New Zealand, but I would say South Africa and New Zealand equally now. I think global netball's in most probably the healthiest place it's ever been. Any one of those teams could beat each other now, and that's great. It's just makes it more challenging, I guess, to kind of grab a gold when there are most probably more teams capable. But the calendar, we're really hopeful for more series to be confirmed in due course, hopefully not too far away from sharing that publicly. And our intent is always to play the best teams as often as we can, and that hasn't changed. I also kind of pride ourselves and me on thinking quite laterally around how do we put ourselves through the demands? What does that pressure training look like? What do we need to expose the players to that might always not just fit the norm in terms of just standalone competition? So it's about what we do in our Roses camps as well as the competitions. But yeah, I'm really hopeful that it won't be long, and then maybe you can have me back on and we'll talk about the release of some more exciting competitions this year.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. And before we kind of round off, we've spoken about sort of the Super League, but we've got players over in SSN as well, and at different stages of their journey. Helen being the superstar that she is for a brilliant Swifts team. Imogen Allison, and it's her sort of first experience down there. And Elle Cardwell, who's on her way back to full fitness. How have you viewed those three in particular? Because I think we obviously like to see our players perform at the highest possible standards.
Yeah, look, I think, after a very challenging season last year, Helen's definitely back, isn't she? So she's pumped and roaring her way through every league match so far. So Helen's in a really good place. We obviously love all of our players playing overseas, but it's good to see Helen happy, playing well in a team that are back to winning ways. And she's firing on all cylinders, plays a very different role, obviously, with Grace than what she will do with us. But we kind of know that anyway. And when Helen transitions in and out, it's an opportunity for us to celebrate other skills that she's got that you don't necessarily see in that Swifts team. But yeah, I think Helen's doing a brilliant job, and obviously high hopes for them to regain a title. Really pleased with Imo's first year. It's not actually easy to go over as a mid-quarter, and it's been a while since most probably one of our defensive mid-quarters have gone over. So to see Imo find her feet, she's loving it. Anna and I are really pleased she's getting some court time at wing defence and centre. It makes great early morning viewing for me when I watch 3 weeks in a row and she's playing every Aussie Diamonds wing attack. So, we've had some good conversations, and our relationship with Firebirds and all of the clubs, we make every effort to speak to them regularly through the season. So they're really pleased with Imo. So more of the same from her. Difficult in terms of results, but I think, for Imo this year, it was all about getting the experience and the intensity of that competition. And how good is it to just see Elle back on social media, back on the court? Like, she's so loved and valued by us all. And it's been a really tricky time for her. And all we want is for her to return safely back to court and enjoy playing netball with a smile on her face. She's an absolute rose through and through. So yeah, fingers crossed that these next few weeks for her really give her some confidence, and then we can put our arms around her and get her back into the roses and kick on from there. But yeah, Sasha and Fran, obviously, that they'll have their eyes on stuff. Well, Fran in particular have her eyes on the prize. So who knows? It could be a Fran Helen final. That would be interesting. But yeah, Sasha Glasgow. I mean, you talk about comebacks and injuries, and I know there's often we focus on, the negative of that when we name players that have maybe had injuries and I just look at the likes of a Beth Cobden. People would have told me she could have never played for England again. She's had most probably one of her finest years in the red dress. So I actually think there's a real strength in players who do come with that horrible baggage of injury, because I don't think you can ever underestimate the strength of mind and character for people to come back. So, yeah, we can't wait. Sasha coming back on programme. She speaks so highly of her experience with the Roses and sees herself as a complete Rose. So, yeah, really looking forward to having all 5 of them back.
And a final word, you mentioned the word like a rose through and through. We obviously got news at the back end of last week about Jiva Mentor retiring, someone you have coached, have played with. I'm not sure words can do her international career justice, Jess, but how important has she been to the game, and how great has she always been to work with?
Yeah, look, from the first session at Team Bath, where I think I'm pretty sure she walked in as a 14 or 15-year-old. She was a trampolinist at the time, and Lynn Gunson and Yvonne, her mum, kind of spotted some potential. So yeah, I am super privileged to have kind of known of Jiva's journey right from day one, really. She certainly overtook me straight away. So obviously debuting against Irene van Dijk, and that kind of camaraderie and rivalry that those two shared was something to be in awe of, actually. And I think you're kind of spot on with it's not just Jiva's ability on the court from such a young age. I think people forget how young she was and the mark that she made on international netball, but it's the way she's championed and stood up for the game, her players, her peers, the rights of the athletes, both here and overseas, because she obviously has spent a significant period of her domestic life overseas. But even that in itself, how inspiring is it for somebody to have kind of led the way both on and away from the court? She's got a brilliant sense of humour. And yeah, I felt very lucky that Jiva was willing and pushed herself to still reach those performance standards needed to join us in Cape Town, which I think is brilliant. And I know she didn't have I know we gave her a silver medal. She didn't yet have it at World Cup level. Sad that we couldn't quite get the gold for her, but she's got a set of medals there that she should be incredibly proud of. But her influence and impact away from the court is as much valued and admired by me as her time on the court as well.
Listen, Jess, we could probably chat for another hour or so, but I'll leave you to crack on with your preparation, and we'll take you up on your offer to chat once we know a little bit more about the international cycle. And thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
So that's Paul and Jess there, Ella. Really interesting to understand a bit better that sort of difference between the Roses and Futures, and how that all kind of comes together from Jess. I'm going to ask you a little bit, though, about what Wales is like, because you're a Welsh international. How does selection work for you guys?
Yeah, so you express interest, so very similar to what you would have done with England. There is a criteria, so you must be playing of a certain level to be able to express that interest. Then you are invited to usually a day of trials. So on that there would be fitness testing, skill-based testing, and then some gameplay at the end. And it definitely depends what point in the season you're at, of how long that you'll take then to find out if you're through to the next part. Sometimes they will tell you there and then at the end of the day if you're then invited to the next weekend's camp, and they'll make it almost like a long squad, and then they'll cut you down again when they can see it. But it definitely is. I've definitely been in some of the trial environments where it's just 2 days worth across a weekend, and then you find out the following week, and usually you find out and it's embargoed for a bit, and then it will come out to the public, and that's when you can tell everyone, and it usually goes out to the public maybe a few days later. But yeah, process wise, I think the scouts that are there will write down the squad that they think, and then they have to go to the board, so the Wales Netball Board, to review the team that they want to put forward. So it's not just those scouts that are there on the day or just the head coach. There are selectors involved that then go to the board decision to almost launch and talk about the team that they want to take and why, and what data suggests that they deserve to be in, and then they'll release that to players. Usually you've got the squad, and then you've got some training partners in the long squad, just in case of injury. Who knows, someone might get injured. Don't usually see that, but yeah, just in case. So yeah, it's tough. The trial is one thing that Wales do is test you. So any skill component, fitness component, it is tested on that weekend. I remember I used to get so nervous about them. I feel so sick in the mornings. I think just because you want to do well, especially in a trial environment. I'd always be like, oh, come on, I'll shine in the game, in the gameplay. Don't judge me. But
Is
it's so
everyone
good.
quite locked in, like when you're in that space?
Yeah, definitely. And as people know, the Wales environment, the expectation is that you're very fit, and that you are hitting the fitness tests, and all the requirements. We are sent what you're expected to get, so you do know the kind of almost cut off. You know there and then if you haven't passed the test in criteria sense. So but usually, to be honest, most people do, just because, especially if you trained all year round, it's actually quite nice having fitness testing towards the end of the season, because what you don't want is for it to have 6 weeks off, and then you're invited into trials and it's like hit you with fitness testing. You've been on a nice holiday, but what is good about the Wales environment is it is very focused. The players do demand that you are hitting the fitness testing criteria, and it will actually be players that call each other out if you don't hit the fitness test. Like Nia Jones used to, I think I'd be having a drink and I'd like be taking my tape off, and she's still running the fitness test, and I would do all right as well, but you'd think the speaker was going to go off because of how fit she was, and it would always be her versus Claire Jones towards the end of the test, and it was insane to watch. And I wish one day I will be able to get to the stage that Nia gets to, but it is also really incredible during those trial situations when people are so determined and so focused to show people their capabilities, and to watch them in that environment is so good as well for your younger athletes trialing. So yeah, lots of fitness, skill based, and then it will be a hell of a lot of match play as well, and you'll be seen across your 3 positions, so you will put forward. I always say, especially to younger players, put down 3 positions so that you can practice being good at all 3, and be seen more. I do think you're more limited if you're just a 1, but then I think as you do go into the Super League, you can get away a little bit more with being like a specialist wing attack or a specialist goal attack. But for younger players coming through, it's definitely good to have more of a range.
So the fitness test, is that like a 30-15?
Yeah, so we do. We do the 30-15. I know England.
Which, could you explain that for folks that maybe don't understand what 30-15 is?
Yeah, so it's similar to a bleep test. Those bleeps that give you nightmares when it switches on for the first time. But you run for 30 seconds and then you rest for 30 seconds, and then the beeps get closer together. But there's zones in the middle of the court that you have to pass within that 30 seconds. So you're not just running at just one whole speed. You have to actually get through gates through that 30 seconds. And you have 2 lives. If you miss a gate and then get through, you're fine, but you've missed a life. And then the next time you miss a gate, you are out. So, and there's nothing worse than when someone is fully pouting and they slightly miss a gate, and the S&C coach has got to say, like, you're done, and you think you've got through. And I've definitely seen moments where players are like, I got through, I'm going, I'm still, and they're refusing to come out of the test because they are like, no, I definitely got through. So yeah, it is tough, but what is nice about especially the fitness tests, the cardio tests are always obviously the hardest in terms of your maximal capacity, but they are nice environments to be in, and that even though you are trying to get an individual score, you're also trying to get your partner through it too. So yeah, I'd always stand kind of just 2 off from Nia, and I'd secretly always, she would be my pacer, so I'd just sit slightly behind her all of the time, just so I was like, right, she's really good at this, so I know if I just match my pace to her, that's the way to do it at fitness tests. You've got to find someone who's really good at pacing themselves. So yeah,
and sneak through off there. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and actually also bears saying that it's the change of direction as well, right? In that test, like, you've got to be able to, it's not just a full sprint down like a football pitch, you have to turn, which is another skill in netball, but you need to be able to do that at speed, particularly internationally, right?
Well, the S&C coaches actually say you're most likely to miss a gate because of your change in speed to change direction, because you naturally become slower as you become more fatigued. So as you start to turn, you're slower out the marks. So you've got to really focus on getting your head round, and then your hips will just naturally follow so that you can come round, where if you're slower planting your foot and then moving everything at the same time, it's a much slower process. So there is some skill to it, to change the direction when you are more fatigued. Yeah.
And that picture you painted earlier of Nia and Claire, a great friend of this podcast as well, but like going at it, I suppose also that sets the tone for the squad as well. Like to see, because Nia was Wales captain for a really long time, to see, we see her as a loud vocal voice on court, but to understand that she's also like setting the bar at fitness and things like that as well, and demanding more of you guys too. I think that's the leadership that off the court that's really, really cool to hear.
Yeah, no, it was always almost like a wow moment to watch them also really close together themselves in friendship, but to go against each other so competitively, but in a really healthy way where everyone is watching them. Players then start running with them to get the highest score that they can. It's something I could only aspire to get to that level, and it's almost beyond, but for them they'd be like, that's the standard, guys, and you all need to work to get to our standard. And even Nia and Claire, they're both, I could have gone further, I could have gone another level. They won't be happy with the level that they got. So yeah, it's great to have teammates like that, because if you didn't have teammates like that, you would settle for those lower standards quite easily. So I know you always know, especially in the Wales environment, if you've got fitness tests coming up, you don't want to be the one coming out first, because people are going to ask questions of you. Coaches and also players will ask why you're coming out. So, but in a really healthy way, it's a really good environment to be in that you actually, say, guys, I'm so sorry, I'm going to put the work in now for 6 weeks and make sure that my result goes up. So yeah.
You know what? This is really interesting, especially off the back of the chat that we had with Rolene, this is a plug, by the way, everyone. But one of the things we asked her about was actually how much she was shooting to be able to shoot with the ease that she does, and she sat here and said, 500 shots a day for some days, and it's like, when you hear that hard work that you guys are doing to be able to put on the Wales dress, and to hear that the smiling assassin actually worked really bloody hard. I think that for younger listeners and for people that wondering about the level of netball, like, that's really, really cool to hear. So thank you for those insights, Ella. Right, now round 14, ding ding, last round of the regular season. We are here now. Before we get into it, I'll just lay out the picture as we are. I'll focus in on top 4 because that's really the crunch bit. Pulse currently top place, 34 points. Lightning second place, 32 points. Thunder on 28 points, and Mavericks on 25 points. Now, Ella, I might need you just to double check my maths, but because Paul is the table guy, this is his thing.
Gosh, you don't want to rely on me for maths, Chloe, but let me have a look. I can get the table up.
Okay, well, hopefully this sounds correct, but for me, my understanding is 3 points for Pulse, whatever happens anywhere else, makes them the winner of the regular season.
Yeah,
they will be on 37 points clear. If they lose with a bonus point, they are very likely still to win because of the goal difference with Loughborough Lightning. So that would put them on 35. And if Lightning win, they're on 35. But Pulse would have goal difference in hand. If they lose with no bonus point and Lightning win with 3 points, then Lightning go top. That's a scenario where we could still see a change between first and second. Lightning otherwise can't be caught by Thunder, so Thunder are basically locked in to third. Thunder, because even if they lose with no bonus point to Mavericks, will very likely stay third with a superior goal difference to Mavericks.
Sounds good to me. I'm going to go with what you said.
Well, let's just
go with that.
pretend like yeah, I'm sure it's right. I feel confident. So what that means, Ella, is this Saturday, 14th of June game at 4 p.m. over Wembley on Sky for those watching. It's a dress rehearsal of the third-fourth playoff. So yeah, very interesting one. I guess one very injured team against one team that's trying to come back from injury. But what do you reckon? Where do you see the key matchups for this one? What do you predict?
Yeah, I think, like you said, nice position for, I guess, both teams to be in, figure each other out before they play again. Big good matchup in the middle, Ratu, Carter. Both will be familiar with each other. But yeah, I think it will be also nice for Thunder to be able to find that form that I think they're still waiting to find. We've seen it, but I don't think in the last couple of rounds we've seen it consistently enough. So hopefully for them, getting Almaray back more comfortable with who she's playing with, allow Reed to get some more comfortable minutes under her belt too, will be good. And just hopefully, we want to see a close game, don't we? What we don't want is it to be a big blowout and then they're playing each other again, and it's not as gripping as what we want it to be as fans and spectators. So I think just hoping for a strong game.
Yeah, I agree. I think El Murray, it will be a tough gig for Keris Finn, but if she goes out kind of running on instinct, I think her instinct served her well against Samantha Wallace-Joseph. So, that's going to be a tough day on the office, but definitely something to want to disrupt because, as you said, like with Paige Reed coming in, with Thunder really focusing and looking at that, because I think against Pulse it was a bit staccato, the balls coming in. That will be, I'm sure Mavericks will highlight that as an area of weakness for them to try and, maybe get inside Thunder's head a little bit. It'll be interesting, I think, tactically as well. It's like, do you keep powder dry? Which is an expression we tend to use a lot on this podcast. But, I think Karen Gregg has a bunch of defence combinations that she can work with Josie Huckle, Nick Smith, Elia and McCormick and Taylor McKevitt. So what is she... Because I think Karen Gregg, right, she's a bit of a... And Camilla Buchanan, Tamsin Greenway, Mickey Austin, all four of them are really experienced. Yeah, 4 geniuses. So, what are you going to try? What are you going to hold back? What are you trying to get out of this game, given, as you said, we know it's a dress rehearsal? I think on paper you're right. I think this is Thunder's to lose, particularly if Razquashi is not back. I think that's the big thing. Like, if Razquashi is back in, then this looks different. But we haven't really got much of an update or a sense of what her injury is or where it's at. So with these previews, it's a bit difficult when we don't have that. But yeah, and we're back to Wembley, which is always kind of nice.
Yeah,
but
I think we can probably expect to see the strongest 7 start, or what the coaches believe should be the strongest 7. But then I wouldn't put it past the coaches to also try a lot of different things during this game, just purely because they know that they're going to be matching up against the same players. So there's no harm in seeing what one player does against the next player. I think one good matchup will be Liversidge against McKevitt. Both quick, both had really good seasons as well. Just to see what that battle kind of does. Do they need to change up any dynamic between those two? And they'll be figuring out who can outwit the other, and which player can do it best. So, but yeah, I definitely think starting strong rather than I'm no Super League coach, but it makes sense to start your strongest starting 7 in my head, rather than keep cards back and then you all of a sudden play them in the next round and you don't know yet how they're going to perform against that side. I think it makes sense to see that coaches put out their strongest starting 7 for at this point in the rounds.
Yeah, and actually to your point about the Liversidge-McKevitt matchup, given that Liversidge was so marked very well by Lightning in the game, it'll be interesting to see what they Mavericks have gone away and looked at with that as well, if they have identified that as a okay, right. Like I said, I think you could have asked what the plan B was. Maybe we've gone away and watched on plan B, and plan B, maybe we try it and then we'll see it when in the crunch, because I think both coaches will say this is one game, the next one actually means the most. So yeah, an interesting one, but it's one of 3 games on Saturday. So
yeah, what time are these? I actually haven't looked at the times. We've got clashes.
yeah, we will have a clash, unfortunately. So you'll be all right from if you start with Mavericks Thunder, but the next game is Panthers Lightning. It's at 6 p.m. also on Sky, and the one after that is at 7. But we'll focus on the one Panthers versus Lightning. Interesting.
I think it could be a good game. So you'll have to remind me what happened in the last round, Panthers Lightning.
Well, yeah, you're right, Ella. It was a close one. Birmingham Panthers nicked a bonus point off Loughborough Lightning, actually. It was 72-68, so a super high-scoring game. And Panthers were, I think, they were riding the coattails of Lightning all the way through it.
Yeah. Panthers love a bonus point, don't they? But I think Loughborough have been in some really good form, but everyone loves an upset. Who knows, this could be a game where an upset comes in. Panthers are in some, played really, really well last week, and your Jazz Brown versus Sammy Wallace-Joseph will be a really good matchup. It was the last time they played. I think they did drop Coffey back, so I'm sure they have reviewed how they played Loughborough last time, just to see what they can do this time. But they've got Sinclair being back in, most likely to start that in there as well, and hopefully she can continue the form that she was on. But yeah, you just, again, you hope for another tight game, and who knows, maybe a little upset. Yeah,
I think Lightning will love that this is the game that they have going into the top 4, because it's a great test. As you said, like for me, Gabby Sinclair being able to play 60-minute netball and at such a high quality, it's going to ask a lot of questions of I think Shadeen van der Merwe, who I think's had a great season. Yeah, that's going to be a pretty spicy one. As you say, Jazz Brown, I think for me has been getting better and better and better, and got that England Rose call up, which is, I think, really we're starting to see why for me in this season now. It's no greater test than Sammy Wallace-Joseph, as you've been saying. You've been saying how great she is. I completely agree. And I think for Berry Neal as well, like whatever, Gabby Coffey is a tough cookie. I think Panthers generally, like, defensively pretty strong. I think, as we were saying, like the super shot defense put out against Forest will be slightly different in this game with Lightning, because obviously Lightning have more threats. They have 3 great super shooters, but for me when you look at how to beat Lightning, you have to look at how Forest played, and that ball speed that we saw from Panthers kind of in that Forest game. If they can get their centre pass to goal like they did against Forest, then I think they stand a really good chance of testing that. So yeah, I think you're right. I think we can hope for a close one if we have. If we have the teams that we're expecting. As always, we should caveat that.
I guess the only thing for your Panthers is that Loughborough do have very impactful changes, like Jodie Gibbs, to just be able to put Jodie Gibson on if Sinclair is running the show. Shadeen's had a fantastic season, so that kind of interchange is really nice. And then against such a strong shooter like Sinclair is such a good option for Loughborough to have. And then they also have your Bella Bayliss and your Ella Clark on the bench. They're just screaming talent coming. If one thing's not working, they can make these changes. And I don't think Panthers have necessarily exposed those changes to have as much of an impact on a side like Loughborough. They've got obviously they've suffered injury, so their goal shooter that's coming in, Ellen Withington has had some court time, so that's good for them. But yeah, just not quite the impact that Loughborough can maybe bring to this game. So that's why you almost hope that the 7 that are put out can do their job against Loughborough 7, and then it will just be interesting how the coaches play it with. Do they keep those 7 out, or do they allow other people to come on? So be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, super. I mean, Panthers have nothing to lose, and
Yeah.
Lightning have lots to learn.
Yeah.
So a good one. So that one's at 6. So it's 7 p.m. The next one starts, and this one, you know, I guess if you're Loughborough Lightning, you're playing to win, and then you're going to find out how Pulse are getting on because they are playing Dragons. It's on Sky.
Yeah.
I believe in the Copper Box, and yeah, interesting this one. What do you think?
I feel like this is just going to go one or two ways, to be honest. Either it will be a frustrating game where we see a lot of errors from Pulse and we expect Dragons to do some damage, or it will be a game where Pulse will find some nice form early on and carry the game all the way through. And I'm sure obviously the latter is what Pulse are looking for, and Sam Bird is wanting them to really sort of put their foot down. I think it will also be a nice opportunity if they can play to be able to get some of their youngsters out onto the bench too. But I wouldn't put it past Dragons to give absolutely everything to Pulse. Again, nothing to lose at all. It's going to be their last game of the season. I want to say, is it at Dragons?
You're right. Yeah, I was literally about to correct myself.
Yeah. So Pulse are also going to Wales, which is no easy task either. So it will be. I think it will be exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing the Scholes McDonald matchup. I think that will be spicy. But yeah, I think you want Dragons to hold it in there, but also you can see it from the side of Pulse do if they're wanting to really, win this league, they need to be really proving that in a game against Dragons, who are will they finish 8th by the end of the season? I guess it will decide on this game, will it?
I think that with that result against Rhinos, they're no longer on the bottom.
No, they've been lifted up.
Oh no, they are still on the bottom. No, because Rhinos have got 9 points and Dragons have 8 points. So yes, if they don't nick a bonus point,
it will all come down to this
then they'll
round.
finish bottom. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think, and actually looking at the goal difference between Rhinos and Dragons, Rhinos are on -107 and Dragons on -134. So it would need to be, if it's a bonus, I don't know. I think looking at the maths of it, I think that Dragons really, 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 really need to win. A bonus point might not be enough to get off the bottom of the table. So I think they're playing for pride, basically. They're playing to put out, to walk away from a season with a performance that they'll be proud of against a team that are probably going to take the league.
I think it does as well show the growth that the league has shown from cutting down with teams, players, and it going towards that more professional. I think last season, if it was 1 versus 8, or 1 versus 10, what it would have been, then you would have expected it to kind of be a wipeout. And it's nice that actually we're speaking like, well, actually Dragons will give absolutely everything to this, and who knows really what the scoreline could be. So it's good. It's good now that this season we're not expecting wipeouts. The games have been closer this year compared to last year, where we were seeing so many games, weren't we, of 20 plus goals without a super shot.
Yeah, I think we've had a good amount of 20 plus, but I don't. Off the feeling, I don't have the numbers. Off the feeling, it feels like less. I think we're probably not still within, like, let's arbitrarily say like a 10 goal. I think by more than 10, it's like a significant win. I think we're still seeing too many of those, but I think you're right. I think it's a testament to Dragons' trajectory in this season that we're looking at this game with, like, I think they're going to push Pulse. I think for me, the issue with Dragons, as ever, is the shooting end.
Yeah.
And I will say this until I'm blue in the face.
Yeah.
Just as I will say for Rhinos, what Lauren Palmer picked up, but Dragons did not recruit knowing the super shots coming in, and they have suffered for that. But I think if you're going to take out Pulse, you've got to have that scoring threat.
And it will be so frustrating to watch if they're not utilising the super shot. You will understand fans getting annoyed, spectators getting annoyed then if Pulse are just putting them out, especially with the form Sophie Kelly is in. If she is going to continue shooting super shots in the normal one goal zone too, they've got to be a threat. Otherwise, it is super frustrating to watch that game too. So, yeah, hopefully it'll be very interesting to see what recruitment wise goes on with Dragons next season. Whether they keep it. I know there's always a lot of talk between them kind of keeping the Welsh in there. There's definitely nothing in there that says that they have to do that. So I know some people do question whether they need to be in there. There's definitely not a clause where it says you have to have this many Wales players in your squad. So yeah, it'll be interesting to know.
I think that's a great nugget that you shared there. Thank you for that, because I've never been 100% sure.
I think
if it's not,
I do
not
think
like a
it used
quota
to be. I do think there used to be something. I may be wrong, so not sure. But there definitely isn't. There definitely isn't this time. Obviously, they get to pick, and again, it works similar to what I was saying about the board and who kind of they're going to go to for selection wise. But Dragons also, they did have a coach, so it wasn't. It was the people almost behind the scenes picking the squad too. So it wasn't. Yeah, it's definitely not. You must have, 5 out of the 10 must be Wales internationals in the squad, which I know some people do think that's what it says, but it is not.
And it is interesting, I think, Ella, as well with Dragons on recruitment, is they choose to have their import in the mid court, which London Pulse is. And maybe the only other team in the league that has that with Tyler Orr. And obviously it's the South African captain, Chawani, and she brings a dynamism, I think, with Bethan Dyke that is super exciting. But with the super shot and the ability to have, and we see how advantageous that is for the teams at the top. When you look at the top 4, they all have 3 shooters that could shoot from range. So what do Dragons do in that department? What do they decide to release their mid import and go for an import shooter? Because that would be an easy fix for that, I think, certainly. Do you keep Georgia Rowe? Because I think certainly the role of the tall holding shooter has been questioned. I think that there is a place for such a shooter in this league. Like, I think when you look at SSN and the evolution of once the super shot settles down and defense gets figured out, that there absolutely is still a place for these shooters. But I think that is a really interesting, because to me, I would never be letting go of Jackie Newton. Jackie Newton has had a fantastic season.
Yeah, I agree.
She's like unsung. I think like maybe a few episodes ago, I went on a random tangent about how great Jackie Newton was, but I want to revisit that and say that I still feel that way. And I think the way that she has stepped on with Alex Johnson, losing Leah Middleton. So I wouldn't lose that back end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really a really interesting one for sure to think about.
Very.
Now, finally, the last game is on Sunday, so you can take a break from your marathon. Come back to this one. It's on the BBC at 4 p.m. It's Forest versus Rhinos. A game that could have been a biggie, but now kind of maybe the only consequence out of it is that Rhinos, if they win, they could or get a bonus point, lift themselves away from Dragons chasing them.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Ella?
Wow, I think, again, I hope Rhinos have had a telling off at training this week and they've done some analysis and they're going to come back looking a bit more connected. Mentor versus Stuttgart, be good. Good match-up to see. Our last time to see Rolene doing a thing this season. So, I guess I just hope that some of these players that maybe haven't had as much court time do get that opportunity in the last game of the season. Your Freya Henshaw, Sophie Egbauer, and they just get that exposure that they deserve. It'll be a really good game to watch. I'm looking forward to that one because I think both sides, you almost don't quite know what you're going to get until you first start watching them in the first quarter. I would say Forest should take it, and I think if they do have that really good form, it could be a nice scoreline in favour of Forest. But then sometimes Forest can put the errors on the board. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one, and I hope it's a close game. But yeah, I'm going to say that I probably think it's in Forest's favour.
Yeah, it's at the motor point, which I think if Rhinos got told off, I think Forest will probably have grieved after that, especially as we said in the light of what happened to Mavericks versus Lightning and the situation that Mavericks look like they're in. So actually it's going to be onto the culture and the character of the players in that team, like how they want to finish that season. Their inaugural season, and we should say that for Panthers as well. This is the end of their new arrival onto the Super League scene, and where do they want to, what impression do they want to leave on their new fans as they kind of go into the off season? I completely agree with you. I think you'd back Forest in that situation, but also, as we said, it was Jeeva's last home game. This will be Jeeva's last game, full stop. So
you do find like a whole new load of motivation as well when it's the last game of the season, especially when you're not in finals, but it's also a really special time because it's the last time, most likely it is the last time for all teams that it will be that group with that coach, and it's the last time that group is all together. I don't think we've ever seen the team remain exactly the same as it was from the previous season. So it's a really special time actually to enjoy that you are playing with each other. You go through so much together as a team in your pre-seasons, your on-court, your off-court stuff. So hopefully all the games this weekend will just kind of be that everything kind of coming together and that enjoyment of that of a whole nother season just being done. So yeah.
I guess, Ella, one kind of last thought from you is you've been going into a top four as you were at Stars. What's that like as a player, knowing that that's coming down the tracks?
Yeah, I think it's so exciting. It's a brand new. For me, I'd never been in the top four before, so when you're used to it, you know what to expect. But for me last year, it was just so exciting to be in that position. And at the point, like I said before, when you've gone through everything with that team, and then you get to be rewarded and have this really nice reward to try and get yourselves into finals, and it's obviously I don't know what it feels like to get through, but I can imagine it's pretty cool. But it's also hard then when you fall short just really close to finals. But again, it does make you appreciate everything that you've had this season. But training is always, you've got those extra couple of weeks of training, but you can always see the fact that you could get to finals, but you're also just trying to crawl to the end of the season. So I'm sure all people in their training environments are just enjoying the fact that this is the last couple of weeks playing together, and this is the part where people train for, and so it's I guess the coaches are just reminding their players that if actually any time is to be focused, it's now. You've done all the hard work, and now you're coming into, and this is when we expect you to play. So there's almost no excuses now. You can't really hide. You have to be ready now.
Yeah, I think it's such an exciting concept to kind of like park. You needed all of that, but now you're parking it because actually anything can happen in this game.
Yeah.
And in terms of your opposition that you will know, is that time then spent like studying what we did in those two, what we're going to do now? Like, is that all like systems go on that front?
Yeah, I think you would watch when you previously played them. Despite the result, you would have a look at both the two performances that you put out against them. You'd then have a look at other teams who have beaten those teams or that team to see what they did. There's some very, very good people at performance analysis that will produce you some amazing stats on certain players, to where they catch the ball on the court, to where they like to shoot from the most. So loads of data that can almost come your way, and you'll do that before the training week even starts. All of that analysis, so that your training is formed around that data and that numbers, and then you'll watch on the platform huddle, and you'll just keep yourself up to date with that team, and so that you know who you're going to be marking across, off the back of your head.
And you put up the dartboard, and then you put. You don't do that.
No, you're not meant to say that bit.
It's a secret. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we'd have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see who finishes top of the pile. But listen, Ella, thank you so much for coming on and stepping in for Prenders as he's been off having his birthday, actually, while we're recording.
Okay.
But also he's had a busy work week and it's about time I step up and he step back, if we're being honest. But
Oh, thanks for
it's been
having me.
great to
No,
have you on.
loved it, and looking forward to the round coming up. Just feedback for Sky Sports next. Can we just please stagger the timings? Because Saturday night is stressful. So
Okay, you heard it here. Sky Sports at Ella Powell-Davies is not
at
impressed.
Sky Sports, please can we just stagger these timings? Because my evening is full of netball, but can we just, hour and a half in between each game? That's all we need. So I can then fast forward the half times and the quarter times, but that's what we want.
The other thing I think, actually, was, to your point, was that Claire Nelson said to us that this, I can't remember quite, it was like 52% of people watch on playback. And it's like, but you put the games on at the same time. So by definition, if I'm going to that game after it's finished because I've been watching the other one, then it's going to be on playback. But anyway, you know what I mean.
That's me
Anyway.
when I'm on my wet weather lessons and PE lessons. I'm putting on the netball, so that's all of us doing our playbacks. Our PE teachers in our wet weather lessons are rewatching the games.
That's the Lord's work, that is. Inspire, catch them young.
I know, if I've missed a game and it's raining outside, I'm thinking, yes, got to watch that with my PE group.
Let's go. All right. Well, thank you, Ella, again. And hopefully catch you back on here soon.
Yes, definitely. Thanks so much for having me.